Chapter 21. After finishing high school and the 2 years normal school course at University of Nevada, Jessie launched out on her teaching career. She was giving a country school in White Pine County, in country more desolate than where she was raised, and as it had been at our ranch, it was a one-family school for one homesteader in the district with a family of 6 children. The schoolhouse was a half a mile from the homesteader's cabin, and there was a teacherage attached, forming an L-shaped building. Jessie wrote some very homesick letters, but she stayed with it. I realized it was a tough assignment for a young girl of 20, and thought it would be easier for her if she could live with a family instead of a half a mile from anybody. She got along fine until January, when a real blizzard blew up. When the storm started, she dismissed school so the children could get home, then busied herself in getting wood and preparing for the storm. When it started snowing, she saw 5 horses move into the L, where they were partly sheltered from the storm. After dark, she could hear them milling and stamping in the snow. It developed into a terrible blizzard, and she sat up feeding wood into the stove and listening to the wind until 2 a.m., when the door blew off the hinges. As she was trying to fasten the door shut by nailing a 2x4 across it, she heard someone calling, "Hello! Hello!" It was the homesteader. He and his wife had become afraid that she would be frightened there alone and try to find her way to their place in the storm and get lost. He had brought along a big hand sled with which to carry the books and supplies back to the cabin so they could hold school there until the storm was over and they could have access to the schoolhouse again. After nailing the door shut, they sat by the fire and drank coffee by the gallon and listened to the distressed horses. When daylight came, they loaded the supplies on the sled and laboriously made their way back to the cabin. Jessie taught the children at home for 2 weeks, when a crust formed on the snow hard enough to walk on. On arriving back at the school, they found the snow had drifted up over the eaves of the building. Jessie wondered what had become of the unfortunate horses. Had they sought shelter somewhere else, or were they frozen to death under the snow? Only time would tell. The following March, I had a melancholy letter from Jessie. Would this term never end? They had such a terrible winter. Then, in a lighter vein, she wrote, "Spring has come at last. Beautiful spring. The sun is shining, the snow is melting, and the 5 dead horses in back of my room have begun to thaw out and stink. If that isn't a sign of spring, what is?" Dear girl, she'd had a pretty tough assignment, but I felt proud of her for having the fortitude to stay with it. But she'd had enough of school teaching for a while, and she came back home and married her high school sweetheart. Alice received her teacher's certificate the following year and joined the teaching staff. She taught 1 year and then married Fred, a cowboy sweetheart that she'd ridden the range with many times. She was fully aware of the fact there was never a cowboy that could support a family on cowboy wages, so after they were married, she went right on teaching, and as the storybook goes, they lived happily ever after. My friends all laughed and said, "What good did it do you to deprive yourself to educate the girls, just to have them teach 1 year and get married?" But I didn't feel it that way. I felt confident they were better fitted to raise their families after having an education than they would have been otherwise. And I feel like New York City. Get me to the fun.